Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the briefing for FYP1. Yes, I see that there are students coming in into the meeting, so I cannot wait for everyone to come before we start. I think let's try to keep within the time frame that I've set, which is 1 hour, starting from 2:45. Okay, so this is the briefing for FYP1 students for the semester January 2023. Okay, so all of you who are here by right should have completed your research methodology class either last semester or maybe in previous semesters. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know that you have now registered for FYP1 this semester, you have to take FYP2 next semester. Okay, so it cannot be the case that you feel that after taking FYP1 this semester, next semester I want to take a break. I take FYP2 later. That one cannot. Please remember, FYP is supposed to be done in 2 successive semesters. 2 semesters back to back. So it cannot be a break in between. Unless, of course, if there are any special circumstances, then of course we can consider. But under normal situations, you should be taking FYP1 or FYP2 next semester or May semester 2023. Okay, so that is the first thing that you need to bear in mind. Secondly, now I have emailed to all of you on Monday the list of supervisor. So I hope this is something that from now on you can start working individually in consultation with your respective supervisor to develop further what you have done during your research methodology class, the proposal that you submitted to me, develop that further into a final year project to be submitted by the end of next semester. Okay. Thirdly, right, and this is my uh, um, uh, mistake or my weakness. I've always had this problem when it comes to submitting to all of you the feedback, my personal feedback to your proposal from last semester, especially students from last semester. Yeah, I always actually do or dictate handwritten comments in my own records. So because of that, transferring that into the proposal document to be given back to you has taken some time. I had thought that because we start our January semester a bit later, I would have more time to do that before submitting it to you. But unfortunately, there were a few things that came onto my table in the first few weeks of the year in January. I had to settle that first, so this has delayed a bit. I don't think I have given anyone back the research proposal from last semester. I will do it over the weekend. Okay, Monday is a public holiday, so by Monday, all of you should be getting back your proposal together with my feedback. I may not be giving feedback that is too detailed because I would like to keep it more open for you to discuss with your supervisor specific areas on how you should develop further your respective research proposal for your final year project. Research in some ways, right, to a certain extent, is an individual kind of approach. So myself, with my background, not really being in communication, more into psychology or social sciences in general, I may have a certain inclination or approach when it comes to how research should be done. But having said that, I do recognize the fact that your respective supervisors may have a specific direction in terms of how your research should develop. So that is something that I would want to give a bit more liberty between you and your supervisor to explore. Okay, so I will touch upon that aspect also more later after this. Okay, now final year project, I've given you this slide for your reference in the email that I just sent to you about 10 minutes ago, together with a few other documents that we will run through very quickly later on so that you know what are they for and when you need to submit everything later on. Okay, so this is the learning outcome for FYP. So plan, design, and then analyze your own data. And then finally, so I would say the first two learning outcomes over here would correspond more to what you will be doing for this semester, which is to plan or conceptualize your research in a much more detailed manner in your chapter 1 and chapter 2, right? And then that is to be submitted later on as your submission for FYP1. But the completion of the research should be done by the end of next semester, and that corresponds to the last two learning outcomes that we have for FYP as stated over here. Okay? Now, this is in terms of the final output to be submitted, which is the FYP final report, and that is to be around or between 50 to 60 pages. However, as some of you have noted, if you refer to the handbook that I've given to you earlier, if you actually look into the minimum number of pages for every chapter, if you add them together, it's actually less than 50. But then please do bear in mind, right? If you submit something which is very skimpy or in a way very lacking in detail, right? If I may use a more proper description to this, then you can't expect your marks to be that high or your grades to be that good. So please do bear in mind that you need to do something based on what we have in a way stipulated, uh, um, listed down as per the requirements stated in the handbook given to you. Now, 60 pages also over here is not necessarily something that we are very, very particular about. It must be 60 pages. However, of course, I would like to emphasize that quantity is not necessarily quality, right? Some students in previous semesters submitted their FYP report that runs more than 100 pages. So that cannot be good because you need to know that part of the requirement of technical writing, which many of you would be involved in after graduation, you need to comply with the length required or given to you, and the expected length of the document. So it's stated over here 60 pages, so it should be around that. Around 60 to 70 is still okay. Anything more than 80 pages would be considered to be something that is not complying to the requirement given to you. Okay, so please bear that in mind. Now, this is arguably the most important slide in this briefing, which I would like all of you to pay attention to. Okay, now firstly, there are a number of you who have submitted in your proposal from your research methodology class that you intend to do a survey research. Now, a survey research, as I've always tried to explain to you, is mainly a quantitative research, although it may have, and some of you I have in a way encouraged or suggested that you add also a qualitative element to your survey research by adding open-ended questions towards the end of your survey. But still, overall, your study would still be, if it's a survey study, it is quantitative. So because of that, right, survey studies, you will require the use of survey instruments or questionnaires. Okay, so I would like to emphasize on this very clearly, okay? As I've stated the same thing during RM, and when you took RM, either last semester or previously, do not simply write or design your own survey questions. Okay, do not do that, please. May I repeat again, do not simply write your own survey questions. As best as you can, find examples of survey instruments or survey questionnaires from previous research. Use them, adapt them, or adopt them. Adopt them means you actually take the whole thing and replicate the whole study again with your own set of respondents, with your own focused area, and then you don't do much changes to it. But adaptation probably means that you would take an example of a questionnaire used in previous research, but you take it with some level of modification. So maybe not all of the items or not all of the questions in the survey you'll be using for your research. You would select the ones that you consider to be most relevant for your own research. So you can also probably look into the context and the sentence structure or the wordings of these survey items. Maybe some of them, because they are done somewhere in outside of Malaysia, or even in a different continent, different cultural situation or cultural context. So maybe the wording of the questions or certain examples being stated in the survey items do not correspond to the worldview or to the mindset or cultural context of the people in Malaysia. Or maybe it is obsolete, and maybe they actually use examples of, if in the case of celebrity or social media platforms, maybe they actually use the example of platforms that are no longer around, like Friendster, for example, or MySpace. So you can adapt by changing it, right, according to your own focus area. So those adaptations can be done, right, as long as you are able to explain that clearly, the process of adaptation, what did you change, what did you modify, and explain why you had to do that in your chapter 3 later on. Okay? Now, so that's number one. At survey research, do some homework, do some research. Find from previous research examples of questionnaire that relates to the variables in your research, and then you use it for your own research. I've stated this many times and I would like to emphasize this again. Replication is a valid way of research, and replication can simply mean taking an entire study done previously by someone else, you do it again, almost 100%. Right? It is okay to do that, but I don't expect you to be able to do that, in fact, right? Because a lot of these research that are published, they are very complicated in terms of their framework, in terms of their methodology. And their questionnaires or survey items or survey instruments can be very lengthy because these are published items and long-term research. So you may not be able to replicate the whole thing. So what you can do is to just simply focus on the variables that relates to your study. A lot of this research, if you notice the details, right, when you read these journal articles, they have a lot of variables, right? Sometimes can be even more than 10 variables in one research. Typically, the research that we do at the FYP undergraduate level is only about 2 or 3 variables only. One IV, independent variable, one dependent variable. Maybe you can have 2 independent variable. In a rare occasion, maybe 3, but most of the time, right, it's only 1 and 1 or 2 and 1. Dependent variable should always be 1, right? Do not make things complicated for yourself, right? And this is something that I've tried to explain to all your supervisors also, so they should know. So you should know yourself as well, and I'll be giving in the feedback that I give, that I'll be giving to all of you. That is one of the common thing that I would point out. Make sure you understand which one is your IV and DV, and make sure your DV is only 1, dependent variable only 1. Your independent variable can be more than 1. However, do not make it too many also. Right, 2 will be okay. 3, I think, is a bit not so common. 1 or 2 will be fine. Right? And then you can expand your research based on your research questions. As I mentioned previously, right, my suggestion always when it comes to research questions, in relation to quantitative research, your first RQ or research question is about exploring the level of your IV, independent variable. Your RQ number 2, exploring or measuring the level of your DV, dependent variable. And your RQ number 3 is to look into the relationship between the two. Either a correlation, normally correlation, looking into how they correlate. And in some occasion, I've suggested to students to do comparison between groups, between male and female, or maybe cross-cultural between Malay, Chinese, Indians, or maybe between amongst groups of other demographic factors like socioeconomic background and so on. So that depends on the focus area that you're looking at. Okay, so these are the things that I would trust you'll be able to iron out in your discussions later on with your supervisor. I do understand the fact that many of my colleagues, I can say that in all honesty, probably do not have a very solid background when it comes to quantitative research. So because of that, the advice that they can give you on the technical side of the statistical analysis or data analysis can be a bit limited. So in that sense, or in that on that point, you can always come and see me for further advice or specific advice. Now, I intend to also, at some point, middle of the semester, to do a workshop on data analysis, right? Looking into how to use Excel and also using SPSS for common types of analysis for quantitative research. Okay, so that will be something that I hope to do starting from this semester, because I think there are more and more students now that I see, and I'm very happy to see this, that you are really trying to do a research of a certain high level, so you would like to try and do correlation. Some of you have also, based on your research questions, would like to try and do predicting to come up with predictors or factors that has causal relationships. So that requires the use of regression analysis. So I would like to try and help all of you to be able to do that according to what you have stated in your research questions. So having said that, I would like to point this out, the third point in this slide about moderating and mediating effect. Please do not put that anywhere in your research. I'm stating this because in the past, right, there are students, right, who were using the reference from senior students in the past, the graduating groups in the past, who the template that was given by my predecessor had that a point about moderating and mediating effect. Now, if you have that in your own copy, right? Because I know some of you over here are very good in terms of networking with your seniors. So you may actually inherit or took the examples of FYP report from your seniors. So you would see in their conceptual framework and moderating and mediating effect. Why? Because that was a sample or example given by my predecessor, Mr. Ruli. Now, that was actually just a sample. It's not to say that you must have moderating, mediating effect. In actual fact, if you are doing quantitative analysis and you want to test moderating and mediating effect, that requires a specific type of statistical analysis, right? Multivariate regression, basically, or even modeling or factor analysis, which are all high level quantitative or statistical analysis process, which I don't expect. And normally, and this is not just over here, even when it comes to in public university, we don't normally expect at the undergraduate or bachelor's degree level for you to do anything like that. So it's sufficient for you to do analysis of correlation and also test of significant difference. The last point over there, comparing between male and female, or comparing the data between people or respondents from different demographic groups. So you can do this either by using t-test or ANOVA, which we can do using either Excel or using SPSS. Okay, so that is something that any one of you, if you have in your current proposal, a research question that talks about or states something like what is the relationship between this and that, or what is the correlation between this and that, or what is there significant difference between male and female, or is there significant difference between this group and that group for this variable. So that is to be analyzed using needs to be analyzed accordingly, right? So that is something I intend to do later on in a separate workshop on data analysis or quantitative data analysis specifically. All right, so let me cover the basic presentation here first. If anyone has any questions, please hold your question first, but you can type your question in the chat box. If you want to share your question orally with everyone later on, you can do it. I can open for Q&A also after this. Okay, now this is one point that is important that I need to emphasize also. What is your responsibility? Your responsibility is to meet with your supervisor regularly. How regular? We do not really stipulate or set in a very exact manner the number of times you need to meet with your supervisor. However, right, there is a minimum requirement to a certain extent based on what I expect in the report that you submit. Now, log sheet, right? To ensure that all important matters discussed during the consultation written into the log sheet. So what is the log sheet? I've given this to you just now. One of the documents I gave to you just now was log sheet. This one. Okay, so this is to be used as some kind of logbook or record of the things that you discuss with your supervisor in your meetings with them. Now, understandably, some supervisor are okay for you to meet them very regularly. Some of them would like to keep it on a certain schedule. I would say because a semester runs for about 4 months or maybe 3 months basically, right? I would expect at least at the end of FYP1, there should be 3 log sheets that are prepared for meetings every single month. But what if, for example, you meet your supervisor or discuss with your supervisor more than once or multiple times in 1 month? I am okay for you to summarize multiple meetings in the same month in the same log sheet. It doesn't have to be a separate log sheet. So you can put in multiple dates over here, meeting number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the month of February, for example. Okay, and then you just highlight or put down some of the points that were discussed during the consultation process. Okay, so it doesn't have to be detailed over here, right? So please do not consider, this is not something that is even graded, I can tell you that. However, how would this be important? Maybe, practically, when it comes to grading. For FYP1, when you submit your first 3 chapters at the end of FYP1, the marks that you get will not determine your grade for your FYP finally, because if you notice in your subject registration for FYP1, the final digit is 0. 0 means it's 0 credit hours. So because of that, the grade that we give for FYP1 is actually more as a evaluation on whether you are in progress sufficiently, right, to move or to proceed to FYP2 next semester. So the grade that you will get upon completion of FYP1 is just IP, in progress. There's no grade being given. The only other grade that is given for FYP1 is F. Fail means you have to retake FYP1. XF is also possible. XF means you did not submit anything. F means you submitted something, but based on the evaluation given by your supervisor, upon moderation by myself as the FYP coordinator, right, we give you the grade of F, which means that you are considered to be not ready to progress to FYP2. So next semester, you need to retake or re-register for FYP1. So that has happened on occasions. Last semester, in fact, we had one student who got F. 2 other students got XF. Right? So because of that, they have to retake FYP1. Right? They cannot proceed to FYP2. So as much as possible, we like to help student, but you need to help yourself also, by ensuring that you consult with your supervisor and submit what is required. Okay, yeah, if you're asking me what you need to submit, yeah, I'll explain that after this. Now, so I just would like to cover this one first. So what you submit, so this log sheet is not to be submitted later on, right? So this one is to be kept and submit only after or at the end of FYP2. So at the end of FYP2, I will be collecting all log sheets for the period of 2 semesters. So this semester, when you submit, submission for FYP1, log sheets, you keep it first. I won't ask for it yet. Okay, so, but how is it important? I was coming to that point. Now, on occasions when we have your marks, right, at the end of your FYP journey, which is at the end of FYP2, your marks are in a borderline area. So what can be the additional contribution that may help you to maybe get past or get a few or 1 or 2 extra marks in order to get a higher grade? So one of the things, and personally this is something that I would do as the moderator for all the grades for FYP, I'll be looking at your log sheets and see how consistent you have been in terms of consulting with your supervisor. Because based on the information in the log sheet also, I may actually look into what kind of discussions that you've had with your supervisor, because I was not involved directly, isn't it? And between in the conversations or the consultations that you have with your supervisor, because those were individual consultation, private conversation, right? But by looking at the things that were discussed, I would be able to point out, right? Especially when it comes to after going through or reading through your FYP report, I may find maybe certain areas that are quite weak, in your FYP submission. So I will look into your log sheet and see whether or not this was discussed between you and your supervisor, and maybe also to get some idea or some you know perspective in terms of what went on, right, between you and your supervisor in discussing that particular area. So if I see, for example, in a way that you were not sufficiently guided or was not correctly also, I would say, sometimes there are issues with the advice given by your supervisor. I feel that it was not sufficiently given guidance to you to do it well or to do it better, then I would see that as an area that points to the idea that you have tried as best as you can to correct or to maybe improve on certain things, but your supervisor had a different point of view. But then later on, when you presented, it became an issue. The examiner and also myself, we may have questioned you in terms of why you did this and did not do this and so on. So looking into your log sheet will be important in that part, and for us to look into possible areas where we can see that your part is done. Right? You have done your part in terms of trying to improve things, right? Or strengthening your research. But there were issues that maybe there were disagreements that you may have with your supervisor and between you and your supervisors. As a result of that, certain changes were not made, or maybe certain things were not done. So that will be the importance of the log sheet, and for me to note down that this was something that in a way points to more of the weakness in the supervision process. Okay, so it's important then for you to do this. Okay, so that we know also as the only record for us to have or to keep in terms of evidence that there was a consultation process that happened between you and your supervisor. Okay, because I'm not going to come to the point of asking you to record your conversation with your supervisor. I think that is a bit too much, but there must be some level of some records that are kept in this format in order for us to know what was the supervision process that you went through. Okay, now there are some students I know, they say that yeah, there are some students, because of certain issues, you may actually you also seek the advice of with other lecturers other than your supervisor, or directly with me. So in additional, when it comes to additional supervision that you may got from your other lectures or from myself, there's no need for you to put it in your log sheet. Unless it is something that you may want to point out that you had uh, you can add maybe a note, right? If you have asked me on certain things, right, you may want to add maybe a brief description about what you discussed with me. I think it's still okay, but there's no need, like I said just now, there is no need to actually put down details of what happened or discussions that you have with your supervisor. All right. Okay, regular meetings and so on. All right, so please, you can start doing this now, or if you want to wait for me to give you back your proposal, I think can also. I should, like I said, I should be able, I've done most of it, but I just want to complete everything and give it in one go. So by Monday, I should be able to give it back to all of you. So if you want to wait, I think can as in wait until I give back your proposal before you start your discussion with your supervisor. But some of you, I know, based on what I've heard from my colleagues, that you have already initiated uh, um, communication with your supervisor. That's good, right? You can always start the discussion immediately. And then whatever comments I give that I will be giving later on, that will be just something that you can discuss further later on. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is format. Okay, all the formats in terms of what you need to submit, always refer back to this, your handbook or guideline for dissertation. So this is arguably the most important reference for the preparation of your FYP report. The main things I would like to highlight are these. At the end, okay, timeline for final year project part 1. Normally, yes, you will submit by week number 12. I should be giving you, sorry, I think this is something that I forgot to do this morning. I should be giving you a more specific timeline, a specific date on when you should submit. But this is the general guide. Normally, students would submit around the time that you see over here. Okay, week number 3. But this is in a way also more of a recommendation. I can tell you honestly, as the FYP coordinator, when I finalize the grade for FYP1, I won't be looking at what happened during the middle part of the semester. I only be looking at the final submission. So if you are submitting, right, the draft and whether it's only one draft or multiple draft to your supervisor, that is entirely based on the agreement or arrangements that you have with your supervisor. But this is a general guide. As best as possible, try to follow this so that you can work or plan your work consistently, right? So that you can plan what are the things that you need to do step by step. So what do you need to submit at the end of FYP1? Submit soft copy chapter 1 until 3, 1 to 3 to your supervisor and to the FYP coordinator, which currently is still me. Okay. This is FYP2. So when you are in FYP2 later on, what you submit is again, you resubmit the refined version of your chapter 1, 2, and 3, but then also, of course, complete the whole research. So that would mean the last 2 chapters are completed during the process of FYP2, and you submit the full report from chapters 1 until 5, chapters 1 until 5 at the end of FYP2. Right? So the details on what are needed, the points and the information required for every chapter is all stated here in this handbook, right? Yeah, this is content details, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. Okay, so at the end of FYP1, you need to submit only until here, chapter 3. So the reason why, as I've stated to you before, we asked you to develop your own proposal when you took RM, research methodology, is because we like the work to be a progress at different levels. So you work or wrote a brief introduction, right, for your proposal. If you remember back, the sections that you have in your proposal starts with the introduction and then literature review and then the research methods. So the groundwork is done already by right. So at the FYP level, you just simply develop them further. Introduction, develop that further into your chapter number 1. The literature review section in your research proposal, develop that further or expand that further for your chapter 2. And finally, the research methodology part, you expand that further also in accordance to what is required or stated over here. Right, so I've highlighted this because these are relatively new things that we have updated since last year or maybe a year before in terms of what you need to describe. Okay, so please describe over here, right, in this section, data gathering procedures on how you plan to distribute or collect your data. If it's a survey research, explain. I mean, who are the respondents, your sampling method. Explain also how you intend to distribute the survey. Is it through Google form or through hard copy surveys? When you want to do this, right, you can also put it over here. Right, so if in the case of quantitative research, you need to describe then what is the statistical analysis that you intend to do, whether it is descriptive statistics and percentages, or if it's correlation, or is it t-test, describe what you want to do. Those of you who are doing qualitative research, explain how you intend to analyze your qualitative data. Okay, now I do have a set of a number of colleagues over here who are quite solid when it comes to their background in content analysis method or in qualitative study. So they should be able to guide you sufficiently on how to analyze qualitative data. Those of you who intend to do interviews or focus group discussion, right? So make sure you describe also the data gathering process, how and who are your respondents and how and why do you select them for the interview or for the discussion, and then describe also how you intend to structure the interview questions. Is it semi-structured or structured, or is it more unstructured kind of interview, right? Explain that. The details are always important, right? What I would say would be the differentiator or differentiates between a good FYP report and a not so very good one would be the details that you actually explain. Right? Chapter 3 is important because it does contribute a sizable amount of marks that you have finally. Right? So if you are able to explain clearly your data gathering procedures, the instruments that you use, the analysis method that you adopted, so those are the things that would really help you well when it comes to the grade that you get finally later on for your FYP. Now, chapters 1 and 2 is pretty straightforward, but please make sure you have all the information stated over here. One particular area that is not there in your proposal, research methodology proposal from last semester or from your research methodology class, is this framework of study. We did not have this in your proposal, so this is something that you need to add. Alright, so why you need to have this, I don't want to explain over here. You can look into read the explanation over here. I will be giving you also later on samples of research or samples of FYP submission from previous semester that I find to be good examples for you to refer to. So look into how they write the theoretical framework and conceptual framework. And this is also one of those areas that I trust you should be able to receive proper guidance from your respective supervisor and what you need to have. All right, so all the other things that you may want to know about formatting and the font type, font size, spacing, all stated over here already, right? Just look through that. Okay, now this is the cover page. When you submit your FYP1, please submit also according to this cover page. inverted pyramid structure. Basically, it should be like a reverse triangle, right? When you arrange the words that you have in your research title. Of course, we won't be measuring the slope or the grading, the degree of the slanting degree of your pyramid, no, but then at least it should look like an inverted pyramid structure. So please follow formatting style that is set to you. Again, I would like to emphasize compliance with formatting is always important, because in many areas in the industry, in communication, corporate communication, and so on, right, you would have to comply with certain standard formatting of documents. And this is something that I hope all of us can train ourselves to be diligent and to be sensitive about, so that you are, if you are required to do so, then it's something that you can easily follow. Of course, then there are, and some of you may point out, and if you work in some other areas in the communication industry now, things are very informal, things are a bit more free and so on. But then, yeah, it's true that I won't deny that, but there are still also things that you need to follow when it comes to some other areas of communication, written communication, especially when it comes to official written communication. So formatting is one of the things that it's good for you to have skills to follow, to comply, and to be sensitive about. So this is the overall estimation of the length of every chapter. So here is where I've said just now, if you add the maximum numbers over here, it would be 60. If you add the minimum numbers, it would actually be 40 pages only. But don't try and just submit the bare minimum, okay? Submit the bare minimum, okay lah, but then of course, there must be something that we can see later on, something lacking here and there. So as a result of that, may not be a very good the grade that you get finally may not be very good. So look into the estimation of the length of the thesis, right, or the dissertation that you have to do based on this guide stated here. Okay. All right. So yeah, like I said, after this, or maybe later on, I'll be giving you a more specific timeline to point out the exact date on when you need to submit your first draft to your supervisor, and also finally and then also the final submission for FYP1. Okay, so I'll give that to you later on. All right. Now, I would like to cover this. Now, I've mentioned just now at the start of my briefing that research can be very individualized in terms of the approach. That I may have a certain approach or a certain opinion in terms of how research should be done, and that will be something you can see reflected in the feedback that I give to you. And for example, in terms of how you write your research questions, what areas that you need to focus on for your research questions, sampling method, and so on. But you may have your supervisors who may have a slightly different point of view. So on occasions where your supervisor may advise you something different from what I have advised you during RM, or the feedback I've given in your proposal submission, who do you follow? Do you follow my suggestion, or do you follow your supervisors? Now, I have to say this because on occasions there are students who argue with their supervisor and say, Mr. Zaki said it's okay. Then it creates a bit of friction between myself and your supervisor. So I like to say that when it comes to, right, not just over here in KDU, but also in many other, in all other institutions, I would say, your supervisor advice is always the most important. Okay, so if your supervisor is very adamant or very, in a way, strict on certain things that he or she wants you to add this, so do this in this particular way and follow, right? Follow as best as you can, unless you are really not comfortable with the advice given by your supervisor, right? You feel there's something wrong with that based on what you have read or what you have looked or come across in previous research or books that you have read. then maybe, and if your supervisor is not able to accommodate your opinion, then you can come and see me. But so when you come and see me, as best as possible, also I try to find some kind of middle ground between you and supervisor, right? So as best as as we can, we would like the process to be a fun experience doing FYP, both in terms of the experience of doing research and also in terms of the personalized interaction that you get from the experience of working together with your supervisor. Right, so I hope that is something that all of us are clear about. Do not use my words against your supervisor. Okay, try to accommodate their requests, and your supervisors also in a way know already about my approach when it comes to research. So most of them should be able to accommodate, unless just as like I said just now, if it's really something you find very difficult for you to accept, then only then you come and see me, right? But try to have that only as your last resort, right? Do not like immediately after 1 or 2 weeks consulting with your supervisor, immediately you say, I cannot stand my supervisor, I cannot work together with him or her. Try, okay? I definitely would not want to change anyone's supervisor at the start of the semester. I have done so on occasions, but normally only after FYP1. When I can see, based on the submission of the student and also the feedback received from both the student and supervisor, is something that is a bit difficult for us to harmonize or to find some kind of middle ground or agreement or consensus about. So only then I may change your supervisor. But in most cases, stick to your supervisor, because I have tried as best as I can to pair you with a supervisor who has a similar background and research interests like what you have stated in your what you have submitted in your research proposal. Okay, PR students, for example, UPPR, your supervisors should be amongst your PR lecturers. So for UPPR students, I think almost all of you, your supervisors are either Miss Marina or Miss Susie. Maybe 1 or 2 of you with someone else, either with Miss Yusnaida, maybe Miss Jehan, right? But I think most of you and UPPR, you are under Miss Susie or Miss Marina, because these are the lecturers who has the strongest background as far as PR research is concerned. So that's why we pair you in that way. But of course, some of you, you have your research proposal, the topics are a bit, it's unique. So it's difficult for us to pair you with someone who has an experience or background in that. So I try as best as I can to pair you with what is I consider to be the best pairing that we can offer. Right, so we hope that you are able to work together, right, with your supervisor, despite maybe the limited background on the part of the supervisor. But at least when it comes to the whole process of doing research, your supervisor, he or she, should be able to guide you accordingly. Okay, now what else did I give you documents just now? Okay, I've covered handbook, briefing. All right, so yeah, one final part. Okay, at the end, when you submit your FYP1, you need to submit, no, you don't need to put this. This is the assessment rubric for your reference. You don't need to submit this together with your FYP report. Your lecturers has a copy of this. Your supervisors have a copy of this. They will use this as reference when marking your FYP1. But this is for your reference so that you know what are the areas that we are looking at for the marks that are given to you. Okay, so this is just for your reference. And then one other thing that I give in the email was this application for extension. So If you cannot submit according to the deadline that is given, please submit this extension application first to your supervisor. Your supervisor needs to approve or accept or recommend first before I approve. Okay? And there should be strong grounds on why you are seeking extension. Although I do understand that there are a number of you who are towards the end of your studies, you may be working part-time here and there or have certain personal commitments outside of your studies. Try as best as you can to manage your time well enough that you are able to cover all the commitments that you have. Remember, when you are registered as a full-time student in a university like KDU or UNWM KDU, your commitment or your priority by right should be with your studies. So it should not be about working. I understand, right? Working part-time is important, right? For some of you, you need to earn some extra money and for other commitments and so on. We do understand that. All of us are surviving in these difficult times. But you need to understand also that we cannot just simply allow you to submit at any time that you want. Okay, deadline is given, right? You know this deadline well in advance, so plan your time well. Okay, all of us, try to juggle different responsibilities or wear different hats and so on. So if you know that you have a lot of commitment or a lot of things on your plate, plan ahead on what you need to do. If you have to sacrifice your recreation time, your entertainment time, or your weekends on certain occasions, then, make sure that you do what is necessary. Okay? So this extension, in a way, theoretically, we can give for personal reasons, especially when it comes to hospitalization or certain untoward events in the family. So issues like that normally are straightforward. We would grant the extension. But if you submit, the reason is you are working part-time, that one cannot. I may actually impose a very strict line. Even if I give you extension, maybe nothing more than a few days. 1 week will be maximum. But on other occasions or other big reasons, right? So maybe we can give a bit longer than that. All right. So please make sure plan your work well. All right. So like I said, right from the start, when you studied or took research methodology, this is a step-by-step process. You start from RM, you further expand this in FYP1, and you complete the whole thing in FYP2. So this is actually, the whole journey is 3 semesters. And if you have done your work well, step by step, things should be very easy, very smooth. But understandably, if I see one of you ask me a personal question over here, can I change topic? Yes, you can. From research methodology proposal, you want to change topic in FYP1? Yes, you can. But then, of course, the burden, I would say, is onto you. Because the idea is when what you have written in your introduction, literature review, right, and your methodology in your research proposal, you expand from that for your FYP. But if you're changing topic, then you have to start all over again. So please think twice before you change topic. If you indeed decide to change topic, the responsibility is onto you to start from scratch, right? To build all together from zero, your introduction, your literature review, and so on. Okay, so you can change, but then of course it's your responsibility, right? To ensure everything is completed within the timeline given to you. Okay, now let me see if there are any questions. No, not many students also over here, only 15 of you. Okay, that's a bit disappointing. By right, I should have how many students registered for FYP this semester? There are 26 and there are only 14 of you, not including me, 14 of you here today. All right, I hope the rest who are not here, they know what they need to do. I will be giving the recording of this briefing later on to everyone. So let me recap again the important points from the whole briefing. Firstly, you can initiate communication with your supervisor immediately, or if you want to wait until early next week, it's okay. I will ensure that I pass back your research proposal together with my feedback latest by Monday. And then I will be organizing at least one data analysis workshop, especially for quantitative data analysis at sometime at the middle of the semester for those of you who are doing quantitative research to learn more, or specifically in terms of how we do data analysis using SPSS and also Excel. For qualitative research, essentially there is no specific software that you can use, although there are softwares. There is one particular software that we have uh, in our software list here in KDU, MaxQD, but then I feel it's not really necessary. Quantitative analysis is mostly about, I don't know, qualitative data analysis is mostly about content analysis. So how you organize your content depends on the different approach that you may have and how you intend to answer your research question. So that would be something that you can discuss further with your supervisor. Now, supervisor list, I've actually emailed to everyone. So you should be getting that in your email. So if any one of you have missed my email, when did I send that email? I sent that email on Monday afternoon. So please check whether you have received that or not. So if you haven't, then please email me personally to ask for those documents. So you to ask for the list so that you can so that you know who your supervisor is and start working with that person. Now, open learning page for FYP. I actually don't have an open learning page for FYP. Do you have an open learning page for FYP listed in your list of courses on open learning? Do you? As far as I know, we don't normally have, or you have, right? So maybe Renisha or anyone, can you copy to me the link of the of that OL or Open Learning page for FYP? Put it over here. So I need to ask ITD, our IT department, to put me as the administrator of that page so that I can actually use it. No, it is Zaki over here, but then why I cannot see it? Okay, thanks, Renisha. All right. All right, so I think if I can get the FYP page, OL page up and running, so I think I'll be putting all the documents that I've shared with you just now over there as well, so that you can use that also as the source of reference for the documents that you need to refer to. Okay, right, anything else? Any questions? Right, if not, yeah, if maybe you don't want to ask questions now, you can ask later on to me either through email or if you want to see me personally also, individual consultation, you may do so at any time. Just email me to set up an appointment if you need to discuss any issues in relation to your FYP with me. Okay? Yes, I will give you the recording later on of this briefing, uh, uh, both through email, and also I will put it in the open learning, the link to the recording for your reference. Okay, now I think that will be it. Thank you very much everyone for coming today. I wish you all the best for your journey for your FYP. This is towards the end of your studies already for your bachelor's degree in communication and also communication public relations. So I wish that all of you will benefit from the experience of doing your own original independent research. During the process, obviously, there will be ups and downs that you will experience. We hope it will be more positive experience that you will face. Even if you have challenges along the line, please make sure you ask for clarification or seek advice and help quickly. If you feel that you cannot get sufficient advice from your supervisor, you can always come and see me. Okay, my door is always open. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Have a nice weekend. I'll pass you your proposal with my feedback by Monday, and then please start working on your FYP. I look forward to see your presentation for your FYP Viva at the end of your FYP2 next semester. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.